Choir law.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you'll please rise, we'll say the pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mrs. Regola-Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Dr. Bell?
Yes, thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Regola-Dye. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Thank you, Mrs. Fiesel. Were there any corrections? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Regola-Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Dr. Bell?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. It's nice that you chose to join us this evening. I have a couple of things I wanted to share. I wanted to thank Kenyon College for allowing us to use their facility. Graduation was lovely. Everything went really well, and part of it was due to the nice facility we were able to use. I'd also like to congratulate the administrators and the teachers for a good end of the year. I haven't heard any negatives. Things have gone really smoothly. So, and I know that takes a lot of work on the part of a lot of people, so appreciate that. And then one other thing I'd like to mention is anyone that you know who's a parent, would you please encourage them to continue learning over the summer with their students, encourage them to read, because we know that they lose about a month, or it takes them about a month to 2 months to catch up in the fall from what they've lost if they don't do any reading or learning over the summer. So if mom and dad could just encourage kids to read 20 minutes a night, that would be really helpful. So if you'll encourage them to do that, we'd appreciate it. And Mrs. Getzmann, what would you like to share?
Just welcome. I know our summer crew is busy amongst the raindrops. At least they are able to work inside a little bit, so that's exciting. And I know there's lots of fun things going on in the district, even over the summer, as we all, as the teachers rest, I guess, rejuvenate. So,
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
I just welcome everyone tonight. Looking forward to going through the agenda, some interesting topics on there.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Fiesel.
Well, I too welcome everyone. I often think of the retirees about this time of year because I think they're probably getting a different time zone and appreciating that. And how fun we did with our athletics. I still just am so pleased, and I hear so many things. You know, the arts, our music program, our academics, just athletics. We have a lot to be proud of.
Good evening, and thank you everyone for being here tonight on this not rainy evening. I'd like to reiterate about our sports program, and also those of you that have a child that's coming up in high school, perhaps look into that bowling team, which was wonderful this past year. And also encourage your children to not only read over the summer, but to attend some of the beautiful, wonderful arts programs we have going on here in Knox County. Lots of things are going on, and our downtown is being rejuvenated, and we need to support that as much as possible. So thank you.
I too would like to welcome you. It's nice to be back. I mean, we had a wonderful road trip last year, but we got a chance to get around all the buildings. And I think it was really invaluable for us to spend some time there. And we'll certainly have conversations about facilities as we move forward, but it was good to see that. So I would also, if I would highlight one area that kind of got a little bit missed right at the end of the year, our Power of the Pen team.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
You know, to take second in the state is pretty impressive, and so kudos to them. Moving on, I have no accommodations or communications as we're in the summer months here. We have reports and public participation. So,
And I do not see Halsey Ann this evening. Mrs. Nesbitt, would you like to say anything? Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for joining us. And I don't see
Mike's not here.
Okay, and we do have one person who signed up for public participation, and that is Shannon Simpson.
Jim? Go ahead and come on up here to the podium there, Shannon.
Really?
We have a microphone right there, so you get to be live on
Okay.
TV.
Will you take me more seriously if I'm standing here like this?
Absolutely.
Just kidding. My name's Shannon Simpson. I have a third grader at Wigan Street, a rising third grader as they're called now. And one of the things I've been really concerned about is how the PTO especially now, is funding screens, and through a recent vote have kind of done this one-to-one thing. So from kindergarten on, like, most of the kids are going to have Chromebooks, and the PTO did a vote to now to allow it so that they're going to pay for that. I was against that. I mean, I definitely have been against screens for a long time, and it's not based in opinion. It's based in a lot of evidence that's coming up that is about retention of information, about ability to sleep. There is a great deal of research on it. And I mean, I have studies I've pulled out from psychologists and sleep medicine and PubMed all about how this is negatively affecting children, and just the growing number of the direct correlation between number of hours on screen and depression and suicide. And we're seeing that at the college level too. I work at Kenyon, and the mental health issues across the board at all colleges are really high, and there's a direct correlation between screen time. And what I'm concerned about is that I know that this is a train that I can't stop in the schools. I see that it's everywhere. However, I find it problematic that the PTO is being asked to fund something that is, and we don't have bylaws about our goals or what we're for or anything like that, but I find it problematic that we're being asked to fund something that is also considered curricular. And aside from all of that, what has also happened in our PTO meetings is that there's a great divide in people that believe that we should and believe that we shouldn't, but that the person who was the one person on the PTO board was actually voted out, that was advocating against the screens, was voted out in a written ballot that seemed extremely mean-spirited. And on top of that, that I'm a new person to this community, and the school that my daughter went to was a very high-end school in the Baltimore area, and they don't really introduce screens until 5th grade, and I specifically chose the school for that reason. When I moved here, I was really aware that there weren't going to be a lot of screens. It's not that, it was more of a play-based thing, all of the recess and all of that. And since this whole thing, it has really changed my mind about this community and how I talk about the school to other people that are thinking about moving here. And it has certainly led me to really rethink where I want my child to be. I mean, most of the schools, like progressively now, are taking away screens, because even at age 2, kids are having developmental and behavioral issues as a result of they're finding a direct correlation between the screens. So I find it problematic that I, as a PTO person, have to now, I will not fundraise this year because I do not want my money going to these Chromebooks for every single child, and I will be looking for a place that I can go that doesn't believe that this is the way to go for kids in the future. So that is what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have additions and deletions.
We do have an addition to the agenda today in your business section, item B4, resolution for a lease agreement between Lenovo Financial Services and Mount Vernon Board of Education for Chromebooks as we continue to move forward. So
That's appropriate.
And I understand everybody has their opinion relative to screen time or Chromebooks.
Absolutely. Not opinion.
Well, it is an opinion. I mean, because we're all entitled to our opinion, right?
Yeah. Can I submit the research
Sure.
on this too?
Sure.
Okay.
And, it would be good if you would help us, if you feel so encouraged with that. I mean, the state of Ohio has really mandated that that our kids are technologically able to take a third grade guarantee test in third grade. I mean, so if we don't do our due diligence and prepare students to be able to take these kinds of tests, we're being negligent, quite frankly. And I, like you, would believe that, well, I might not believe that there's no screen time, but I believe a lot of things in good measure, not too much, but enough. I don't want to be anybody that prescribes that we're just all Chromebooks and that's all we do and that's the only way we learn, because the reality of it is I believe we learn best one-to-one and with our teacher, and that teacher being up front. But we have to prepare our kids for, unfortunately, these high-stakes tests, and that's what we'll be inclined to do. And I think there is value, quite frankly, in some educational technology. How much? That certainly is a matter that can be discussed as we go on. I would say, though, that, and I heard this came out of this PTO meeting, we would never expect PTOs on behalf of the board to purchase Chromebooks for our students. If we believe they need them, then we'll purchase them. And we believe that we need to make sure that we have enough Chromebooks so that our students can adequately prepare and take these tests when they're time to take them. We will always provide that technology. Anything above and beyond would be at the discretion of the building leadership or perhaps the PTO in this case. I'm telling you right now, we're going to be approving at least tonight for 2,100 new Chromebooks, grades all the way from the top down. We're one-to-one grades 6 through 12. I mean, that's a position we believe that is the right way to go. So, so there isn't a preclusion that PTO should be buying these so that kids can test. I heard that sentiment out there, and it's not true. But we do have to do our part, and the state really kind of, helps us move in the direction we move. So.
I wish I could talk more. I only have 3 minutes.
Can
And
you,
maybe you can set up, we can talk. I mean, I don't know what the hope would be as to what the outcome would be, right? I mean, if it is, hey, we need to take away Chromebooks at the elementary levels, I just don't know if I see that happening. And I don't believe that I believe that, quite frankly. Do I believe in moderation? I do. I don't really know if our K1 2ers, how much time they need to spend on Chromebooks. I do know that they have to learn how to at least home row, pack, do that kind of stuff, or they'll get to 3rd grade and they can't even, they won't be able to do anything related to state testing. And I would be hard pressed to not find that probably most states have some sort of this kind of a requirement. If they would look to change that and stop that kind of testing, we might rethink, where that needs to be implemented, for sure. So I wouldn't mind sitting down and talking with you if you'd like to do that, because I'd hate to have you leave. I mean, I don't know,
can you clarify something? When we've talked about one-on-one, you said 6th grade and above.
6th grade and above.
So kindergarten through 5th, they're not going to have their own Chromebook.
Well, we don't let any students, number one, take home
Right,
Chromebooks,
okay.
grades K through 5, but we need to make sure we have enough computers or Chromebooks at those buildings for those grade level students who have to take the test as they take them in the spring.
Well, our school leadership says that they should be one-to-one. So that is.
Well, I think that certainly is an opinion of that particular, the leadership there. And when I heard about the PTO needing to buy them because kids weren't able to test because they were getting older, I think it's fair to say we had a conversation that was not the case. If we need the kids to use them, the board will provide them. You don't have to buy
Our PTO
them.
also agreed to spend $6,700 a year going forward
Every
on
year,
technology.
regardless of the budget that the leadership of the school gets. So from now on, the PTO will be funding.
And it's unclear who's making the decisions in the building about what that technology would be, because it says Chromebooks or other needed technology. And it's unclear who's going to make that decision about what that technology is.
Who do you think should make that decision?
Well, for PTO money, teachers, because that's the request.
My druthers would be then that the building principal work through the PTOs, present whatever case they have, and the PTO gets to make that decision.
Well, they made the decision to spend $6,700 gifted to the school for technology.
Okay.
But that's regardless of the budget, and so every year that fluctuates and.
Yeah, and that, I'm unaware of all of those parameters, but that's between the PTO and the building leadership, and how they've determined that, I guess, is up to a vote of the PTO, and that's.
Is the building leadership, principal, teachers?
It would be a combination of principals, teachers.
Maybe committee chairs
Could be.
from the building.
Could be. And it's not uncommon for other building level PTOs to work towards some technology funded purchases. I mean, they do that. And I think that can be appropriate. But as it relates to Chromebooks, and hey, we don't have enough because the district doesn't provide, that certainly is not the case. And so there would have been, we would have provided everything they need for Chromebook purchases.
And that's not unusual for PTOs to do that kind of thing. I'm really going to date it, but when we were actually here, my children were here in this particular building as an elementary, and at that time I was very heavily involved with the PTO. We, at that point in time, provided computers with PTO funding. So that's something that has, yeah,
We funded
yeah.
Chromebooks every year I've been on PTO at
Yeah.
Main Street.
yeah,
I'm aware, I
yeah.
still find it problematic, and I wish that. Yeah.
Understand your concerns, Andrea, yes.
You know, another thing that just kind of jumps out at me, recently I was given this sheet, House Bill 166, Foundation Student Wellness and Success Funds. So there's different categories that generate our funds. And when you look at Knox County and you look at Mount Vernon, it's 43.5% poverty based on the most recent census. So, you know, that introduction for younger ages to have computers to get ready for the test, I think that's valid too, to think we have the standards, the goals for the third grade test. And when I look at this poverty rate, there would be a lot of homes, I would think, that might not have that introduction to the computer. I mean, that makes sense too, right? And I appreciate the research, you know, as well. And you'll leave that, right?
Yes, I will.
Okay. So that was the addition to the agenda.
And your superintendent's report.
All right, under superintendent's report, I have two items for information. The July 15th board meeting, I know I had asked you in a board update to kind of take a look at your schedules relative to that. We'll be on vacation that week, and that was the only time we got our place to stay. So, you know, July is a relatively boilerplate kind of a month where we don't have a lot on the agenda. And I think I provided a couple different options, you know, for you. One, to reschedule, and then certainly two, if we wanted to move a meeting or move to the August meeting, we could do that. But that July 15th is it's my vacation week, so if we could reschedule. You could have the meeting without me too, that would be okay if you'd like.
I think we'd prefer to have you here. I'd like to know if July 22nd would work for everyone. Can you check your schedule?
It does not, that's
Doesn't-
fair week.
Oh, okay. How about the 29th, or is that still?
No, fair's over that week.
The
I'm not
29th?
going anywhere this week.
Okay. So it's okay.
But our next meeting, though, is the 26th, 19th, no, 26th.
It's the 19th.
Oh, okay.
It's the 19th.
19th, okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
That's still like 3 weeks, so.
Right.
The 29th, Mrs. Fiesel? That's okay? Mr. Thompson?
All right?
It's okay with you? 29th is all right?
All right. We'll make sure we make that correction, and we'll change the 15th July meeting to July 29th. The second item I have for information is a facility construction update. You know, as you drive by, you see so much going on. I figured you might want to continue to have an update of what is going on. So just to give you a sense, as of today, So I'm going to show you some pictures here, but the largest part of the construction right now is at the stadium entrance. The underground electric and plumbing is complete. The footers are complete. The concrete base is complete. So there's a floor. The exterior walls are in the process of going up right now, and all of the exterior walls will be up by July 1st. Trusses will be installed that first week in July once those exterior walls are up. At the same time, they'll be working on the interior walls. Those will be complete by the middle of July. And then the parking lot, once that is done, the parking lots actually will begin to be worked on all the way up to the field house, and the parking lot should be done by the end of July. And also the interior and exterior finishes will be done in the middle of August, just in time for the start of the fall season. To give you an idea of where some things are, so this was probably, well, there's sunshine out, so you know this was a long time ago. That was, that's where the old stadium entrance used to be. Obviously, they took it down and they put footers in, and then that was called the footer block. And then so the next slide, now what you're seeing is they went ahead and poured the concrete, and at the same time, coming up through the concrete are all the plumbing, the plumbing and electrical kinds of things. We moved from there now, they've started up with a block. And so you really start to see it kind of come into shape at this point. Within the next 2 weeks, both sides will be blocked all the way up to a point where they can begin to do some rafters. I included this other picture because it's really kind of interesting when you go there. So I tried to zoom in. I could zoom in even more, but if I was standing right where the stadium entrance would be, this is where the field house will be. Can you see the difference in elevation? Mm-hmm. Obviously, with all of the elevation pieces and the 100-year flood and the floodway, that needed to be raised because it'll be occupied. And yet, we still have to put down a gravel base, and we still have to put down asphalt. So it'll raise a little bit, but there will be a small natural wall with the nice stairs that walk right up into this area. So just to give you an idea what that elevation change would look like. And then, of course, moving forward, just so you're kind of stay on top of it, the field house, the excavation and compaction is complete. So if you drive by right now, you're seeing the crushed limestone. They're in the process now of digging out the footers. Believe it or not, what they have to do is they go in and they compact it all, and then they go back in and they dig it back out, just where the footers are, because it's got to have the compaction. So the footers should be in middle of July. When it really gets to become more fun is when you start seeing the steel go up and being erected, and that'll be towards the end of July. The bus maintenance garage is in a similar fashion. They're going to move from one to the next. So right now, they're taking the excavation, which they just are about ready to finish. They'll move now over to the bus maintenance garage, and they'll start excavating there. Then they'll go footers and foundation. Then they'll go steel structures. So everything just kind of keeps moving along. And in the meantime, we're still having meetings about all the kind of interior kind of things. We had a 3-hour meeting today just going over the field house and each section and checking, and so they're long meetings, but they're much needed. And we're really working through the process. So
I have a question. You explained that we're going to be doing part of the parking lot. How do we protect that during the construction of the field house?
What they'll do is they'll be done with the stadium entrance, so they're going to take the parking lot all the way up about 2/3 of the way. That'll be complete, and then what'll happen then is all the construction vehicles will be going down Yellow Jacket Drive and in the backside. So there won't be construction vehicles going over top of the parking lot.
Okay, and that was a concern. So thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. We have a number of items recommended for board approval. We have the home community school student participation, a couple students there. We have the handbooks for the elementaries and the middle school and high school. I think what you noticed, and I shared in the update, is really the internal pieces are all the same. Each elementary might have a separate little beginning section or a separate little end section, but they work on the handbooks together. The middle school and the high school handbooks are listed there, and then we have the administrative handbook. So those 5 items for your approval.
Okay, I would entertain a motion then to approve those items and superintendent's report recommended for board approval.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Rolladai. Are there any questions?
I'd just like to say again, thank you to the elementary principals for working so hard and making those unified
Made it a
handbooks.
lot easier. I did have a question about the high school handbook on the graduation requirements. I tried to contact Mr. Well, but I think he's gone.
He's here all summer, but he might have been home when you
Right,
called.
well, I got a message saying he was out. As I understand it, for 2020, students have to have that economics and financial literacy requirement fulfilled. I got on the Ohio Department of Education website, which shows graduation requirements, and I don't think we have that listed on the
Inside in their handbook on graduation. I can certainly make him aware of
So I'm
that.
sorry to do that in the meeting, but I would have taken care of it ahead of time.
You might write that down for me, Pam. We'll double check on that one. We have another item to check on the high school handbook. Annie was A-R-Y in a couple spaces versus A-N-Y. I don't know if spell check just didn't get it, but.
Right. It's easy to do a replace. Huh?
Yeah, I'll definitely-
Okay, any other questions? Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Regola-Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. For the success, I just picked 2 articles this time. One is the 10 ways to give students more control of their education. And they had some good suggestions for teachers, such as giving flexibility in homework so that you might assign students to do maybe 10 out of 15 problems or 15 out of 20 and let them do some selection of their own and choose. Also to measure understanding in different ways. I know multiple choice tests are very easy to grade, but they don't show different styles of learning, so they were encouraging to use a variety of testing measures to measure understanding. Also to personalize content materials and let students choose, give a book list and let them choose to read a book of their own choice. And if practical, to let them even schedule, create their own schedule and revise it if that's practical. And to help them set their own goals for the year, to teach them to self-assess, whether it's just to reflect on their learning at the end of a class period or the end of a day or a week, to provide some kind of reflection, self-reflection. And I don't think we do that. We make kids responsible for reflecting on how well they're doing themselves. And to solicit feedback on courses or classrooms, to differentiate rubrics, to use project-based learning as an option, and to use the supportive classroom policies and rules in which the students would have a role in developing those, which would strengthen their civic values, boost their academic achievement, and improve their engagement. And then the other article that I thought was really relevant was 10 ways to combat middle school reading failure. And the reason that seemed to be pretty important when I read it is that 2/3 of middle school students in the United States are not proficient in reading. And we know that if they're not proficient in reading, they're less likely to graduate, they're more likely to live in poverty, and they're less likely to be prepared to compete in the 21st century workforce. They also pointed out that it's much more urgent in middle school if students can't read, because we emphasize third grade, and that we have a lot of resources in third grade. But in middle school, they point out all of the barriers that are there, that the middle school teachers often don't have the knowledge or experience or the specialized training necessary to help students with specific learning disabilities. That the current assessments don't differentiate between decoding knowledge and automatic use of that knowledge. So it makes it difficult to determine what the appropriate intervention is. Also, the daily schedule of middle school is not conducive because of, going to different classes. And if interventions are not targeted, they can even impede progress of students. So if they don't target the exact situation and take them out of class for something else, then it's actually impeding their progress, which I thought was an interesting point. Professional development is focused on efficient development of basic reading skills, not routinely available at the middle school level, and that adolescents also, by that time, are willing to opt out of engaging in intervention because they don't want their peers to know that they're not very good at reading. So, and then they gave 10 strategies to help teachers be better informed about student challenges and more effective in helping them. And all of those were really good. If you can go to those, I was going to pull those up. I didn't write them all down. Number 7, I highlighted. They're numbered if you.
Explain the cognitive science.
I can't see it from here. It's telling me I have no internet, so I cannot.
It's about the cognitive science area, new approaches.
That's number 7.
Okay, that was one that I thought was very, all 10 of them were really good, so I would encourage you to read those. Can we blow it up a little bit? From this angle, I just can't read it very well.
See make it bigger.
What's this here?
What is that?
Yeah, click this, and then maybe your plus and minuses.
That's the only thing I don't like about the Success website.
Yes.
Is
Yeah,
you
that's
get
hard to
so
get.
many
Yeah.
ads,
Yes.
and I don't see the ability to blow this one up unless I go up here. I could probably.
I'm sorry, I should have written them all down.
There it is. There.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so let me.
Start at the top.
Right. So relevant professional development, that's extremely important, as we already know. And maybe sometime we could find out what they're doing at the middle school. I would be interested in knowing that, because I know that if you can read, you can do just about anything. But if you can't read, it's really, it can be very detrimental to learning other subjects. Carefully choose research on student-specific reading. Ensure school specialists understand how to use the assessment data. In other words, we need trained professionals to interpret it. Hire professional coaches to help teachers implement interventions. Coach teachers and staff. To explain to the students in advance. In other words, develop a relationship with them so that they trust the coach, and then they'll be engaged in trying to do better, and establishing a trusting relationship. Then explain that cognitive science has, and I thought this was a really good point, if students understand it's just like learning a skill, like a sport. They might be more motivators. And then engage the student in, we already did that. Jointly develop specific goals with each student, and then identify steps along the way to measure their progress and encourage them to periodically evaluate and revisit those goals. So I just think reading is very, very important for all kids, even though you can take a computer and you can have it go to audio. There's so many things that you really can only get from a textbook. So, or just reading for pleasure. I would hate for kids not to be able to just pick up a book and enjoy it. So, that's something I'd like us to focus on and make sure our kids in middle school, if they've been missed somehow in 3rd grade, or they've gone backwards, that our kids are going to be proficient in reading. So that's my report. Are you wanting to say something?
Oh, no, I am reading
Good.
a book called Leadership in Turbulent Times. And it's really interesting because it leads off talking about the success of Abraham Lincoln and his quest to read and to learn more. And it was interesting just how much he treasured just being able to get a book. And yet today, whether it's on our Chromebook or a regular book, we get a library, it's readily available. But now it becomes more about motivation to read, whereas he just thrived it. And in the course of that, I mean, his father, as you would read the outline or the write-up about him, his father was like, to read is idle time. You need to be out working hard, and he's shaping his mind, whereas his father's out, and so it's just interesting how much he relished the ability to read and how much he sought to get books. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's a balance. We need to do both.
Yeah.
We need to work hard and read.
At the younger levels, there's a kind of a saying that goes, in the younger levels, we learn to read, and as we get older, we read to learn. And I give Gary credit for this several years ago. I mean, at the elementary level, we're learning to read. We use DRA levels. Everybody knows what their alphabet letter and where they're at along their continuum, and yet we would get to the middle school, and then sometimes we didn't have those kinds of diagnostics. And I know we hate to give more tests, but we're using NWA MAP now, which really kind of allows us to know where each individualized kid is at a point in time. And we're able to more tailor-make their learning to read, more specific. And I think we're doing that better at the middle school. Obviously, if we throw more coaches and more teachers at it, obviously then there's that balancing act between, that as well. But I think it is important to read.
I do want to mention about students controlling their own education. I know that some of our schools have child-centered teacher and parent conferences, where the child kind of runs the conference and kind of tells what they're doing and how they're doing. And I know sometimes it's related to behavior, but a lot of teachers will say to the child, well, how do you think you did today? And what can you do better tomorrow? What can you do to improve? Or do you think that you did great today? So there are little ways that teachers can implement that into the day if they have time.
And a lot of the kids, I know in middle school specifically, they did a lot of self-mapping of their progress in classes and behavior and those sorts of things. So they were actually charting and were able to follow those.
Well, I know the PBIS has been wonderful, and they've really been successful with that. So, and I know that will lead over into academics as well. Okay, well, thank you all for listening.
We have one item in this section for board approval. It's an overnight student field trip for FFA. They go to National Convention in November. So that's the only item in this section for your approval.
Okay, I lost everything. Okay, I would entertain a motion then to approve that.
So moved. You beat me, Jody.
Thank you, Mrs. Getzmann. Would you like to be second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a second. Are there any comments or questions?
We just think our FFA program is growing, and that's
Yes.
great.
Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Mrs. Regola Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. I'm trying to pull back my...
Fiscal services.
Okay, fiscal services, I'll turn it over then to our treasurer.
Okay. We'll start out with the financial report. This is the financial report for the month ending May 30th, the 31st, excuse me. There's our reconciliation for the month. You can see we ended up with $20,705,419. Again, a reminder that a good bit of that money, or part of that money at least, is in there for the big construction project that we have going on, or several of them actually. This document shows where we are in comparison to where we expect to be by the end of the fiscal year, which is 1 month away. Actually, it's only a couple weeks away now. So you can see that as of the end of May, on the revenue, we've got about 95.73% of that money in. If you go down there to total revenues, yep. And on the expenditures, we're down to about 92%. Obviously, we'd like the expenditures to be less than we projected and the revenues to be higher. We did get the settlement in for Medicaid. That came in last week for $225,000. That's not showing in here because that happened in June. So that'll look nice in there. And at the next meeting, at the end of July, we'll be able to tell you how we did for the fiscal year. If you want to scroll down to the next, there's our interest on investments. 291,000, almost 292,000 for the fiscal year, and in May alone, we earned $36,000 in interest on those funds that we have invested. And then the next two slides are from the investment portfolio. This one is the regular investments that we have in there, which is a general fund money. We also have money in First Knox as well, but this is some other money that we hadn't put in with another company. And then the next slide is the project funds, which we're keeping those separate. The project for the money that we have invested over there for the project funds are separate from our regular funds, just so we can keep track. And the other three reports in there are the typical. We have a report with all the fund balances and the check registers and also the receipt. Temporary appropriations, the next report. Once we close the books, which we hope will be July 3rd or maybe back after the 4th, in order for us to start spending money right away, we have to have temporary appropriations. These amounts that you see up here are basically 80% of the amount that we had spent as of 3 weeks ago. So we just have to pick amounts knowing that we won't spend them before the September appropriations come in. So we just pick 80%. If for any reason we have to change, we have to increase those before September, we can, but that's what that represents. So once that's approved, we send that to the auditor's office and that money is appropriated so that in July, obviously we have salaries to pay and all of our regular expenses. So if we didn't have appropriations in place, it would be illegal for us to write a check in July. So these are our temporary appropriations. And then we have one change in the appropriations for this fiscal year, and that is in another 29,000, I believe. I'm gonna have to blow that away. The gray column there, you can see 29,000. That is for our auxiliary services money again. We got a little bit more of that, and that has to be spent, and that's our non-public schools that have money that they need to spend before the end of the fiscal year, so we needed to add that to our appropriations. So that's just an update. And that'll be the last one, so whatever's in the last column there is our total appropriations for fiscal year 19. And I have donations, one donation to Twin Oak Elementary from the PTO. And it's for an amplification system for 10 classrooms, $8,540. And that's it for finances.
And I would entertain a motion to approve those financial services items as read.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second those.
Thank you, Mrs. Gatzman. And we're very appreciative of the large PTO donation. It's awesome. Were there any questions about the financial reports? Thank you for all that you do for us. And if you'd call the roll, please.
Mrs. Regola Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, motion carried. And our legislative liaison.
Yes, those two links there, you can look at those at your leisure, but I wanted to focus on HB 166 this evening, the biennial budget. And under financing for Department of Education, which when you scroll through that bill, that analysis, you would find it starting on page 114.
Do you want me to go to 100?
No, you don't need to do that. The Department of Education will pay school districts an amount equal to the districts for fiscal year 2019. These are all proposed in here. Community or STEM schools will receive the amount prescribed by law, deducted from the resident district. For open enrollment college credit plus, the formula amount equals that of 2019. The student wellness and success funding, which you had mentioned earlier, Mrs. Fiesel, will be a minimum amount of $25,000 for 2020 and $36,000 for 2021. This is the same amount for charters and e-schools. Any district which receives supplemental targeted assistant funding in the wellness success funding, any district which receives supplemental targeted assistance funding, the wellness success funding would be based on per pupil rather than just a lump sum. A report would be made to the Department of Ed on how districts used these funds. Also included in the budget are school climate grants. It establishes the Quality Community School Support Program, under which the community schools of quality receive an additional $1,000 to $1,750 per year for each full-time student. And I tried to find out a little more what the criteria is for a quality school and under these circumstances, and it wasn't very specific. So I think that you'd have to really go delve into the Department of Education and see what they determine is a quality community school. Supposedly within the budget, the Academic Distress Commission would be dissolved. That would have been HB 70 original. And replacements for that would include a previous school that must establish an improvement team. Any school not previously under ADC, which had received an overall grade of F from a previous year, creates an improvement team. The superintendent, with the criteria developed by the State Board of Education, will review when a school may leave the improvement status. So that still is up to the state superintendent and possibly the improvement team. And then there is a great deal of information in the budget about community schools and the sponsors and their evaluations. A little further on, the budget includes requiring a public school or charter, non-public school, to require a foreign language for graduation. We must accept 1 unit of computer coding instruction to satisfy that requirement. So they're still looking at that as a foreign language. One other point of interest, the amending of the statutory minimum teacher salary of beginning teachers with a bachelor's degree from $20,000 to $30,000. Replacing the Bright New Leaders for Ohio Schools program would be replaced with the Ohio State University Fisher College of Business and College of Education and Human Ecology to administer the alternative path for public school administrators. And those were the points of interest that I wanted to bring up. And then just as a little bit of levity, following the section on education are the proposals for the Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors. So,
Put that in our career pathway.
yeah. And it's possible, who knows? So if you have any questions about any of this, don't hesitate to send me an email if you'd like, or if you have any other comments. I know Mrs. Bennett gave me an information which I did not yet receive on House Bill 239, which would help reduce testing. And that was also included in the budget, which I just didn't mention. That was another item. So
I know you have a particular interest in that. So
yes, I do.
You'd be happy to see that.
Yes, thank you. Anything else any comments or, okay, thank you.
Under this section, we have a number of items for your approval. First, we have a number of free facility requests, and then we have a facility request at the understanding of the request for movie build for rental. Those are items 1 and 2. Items 3 is the LACA contract. And then item 4 was the addition that we had to the addendum, to the agenda for the lease agreement with Lenovo Financial. So those 4 items for your approval.
Okay, can you open Lenovo, and since we haven't seen it now?
So what Lenovo did was they had, they asked our attorneys to look into it, and so you might be able to expand upon this, but we had to have attorneys make sure that it met the resolution authorization. So this was all developed by the attorneys.
Okay. All right, I'd entertain a motion then to approve the
Items 1 through 4.
business services items as read.
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Fiesel. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Roda. Were there any questions? Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mrs. Regola Dye.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann.
Yes.
Dr. Bennett.
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. And student services.
I have just one item for board approval tonight, and that's the contract with Mansfield Psychological Services. They will be providing evaluation, doing the evaluations for 3 elementary buildings and the middle school. And our evaluations that would involve St. Vincent as well. We have some child find responsibility there. So this is a 1-year contract. We have interviewed, and there is a big shortage of psychologists as they relate to schools. And so we were able to find one of our own for the 2nd year.
We currently have 2, we've always had 2 school psychologists in the district. And when Mr. Sussman retired, you know, we found a second psychologist, and obviously that unfortunate situation. We did finish out the year with this particular group out of Mansfield, and their work was very good. I mean, their work is really good. The challenge is you're paying a premium price for that work, and they aren't here 5 days a week. And so our goal was, we really wanted to find that second school psychologist here 5 days a week. And we had some really good leads. We were really excited about a couple, and unfortunately they don't really live in the area. And so when it came right down to it, they had to make decisions on travel, and they just weren't able to do it. So we thought entering into a 1-year contract, and I give Pam a lot of credit because you know, they knew how badly we wanted our own school psychologist. They were charging us $900 for an ETR or an evaluation, and Pam was able to work out a deal where it was $800, and they would probably perform almost 100 of these evaluations for us. We have a large you know, student population who are on IEPs, and so you can just imagine every 3 years you have to, you know, work your way through the process. We have about 700, right? So.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, would you,
I don't have a motion.
we don't have a motion. Okay, that's what I was trying. I'm sorry, I'm not with it tonight, as you can tell. I would entertain a motion then for the contractual agreement with Mansfield Psychological Services.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Rhoda. I do have a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mrs. Getzmann. Were there any questions?
Now, if by chance we would happen to find a psychologist for our district, is this contract something that can we get out of it potentially? Is there a clause in there for that?
We had a more severable clause last time because they knew we were concerned for them to lower that rate.
Okay.
They said, we really need a commitment for a year. And in all reality, you know, once school has started, we won't find any school psychologists.
Okay, all right.
And I just wonder if there's a way that we can recruit, like colleges that do train school psychologists.
I'm going to pass this around. there's copies for everyone. This is an update from the Office of Exceptional Children, and there's a shortage statewide, and it's a long-term shortage. They don't see the end in sight at all by looking at colleges, who's coming out of college with this license and degree. So the ESC was in the same position last year. They didn't have a site for the whole year to do all their preschool.
Well, I know you work hard every day, so appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, and if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Regola-Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. Personnel, certificate.
Under personnel, certificated and licensed staff, no items for information. As is customary this time of the year, lots of employment kinds of things and even resignations. So Section 1 are the resignation of some teaching as well as supplemental duties. Item 2 is the employment of an extended year school contract. That's for this year. We have a number of third graders who are still working on that third grade promotional score. Thankfully, in a district our size, we're over 300 third graders. We're down to about 4 students who still haven't gotten that promotional score. So we spend extra time over the summer to help them. And then you're going to see in Section 3 the employment of teachers or certificated staff for the 1920 school year. You can read down through those. You probably have in some respect. It goes down to the assistant, to the psychologist, treasurer, mentor, supplementals. And we have all of our committee work, which is part of the contract. We have really reduced some of those over time, but we still certainly need a couple of those. So you're seeing those reflected. Then you start looking into advisors and directors and different extracurricular kind of responsibilities. We have kindergarten registration still going on. We had our biggest impetus of that has already taken place, but we have over the summer kindergarten registration that'll happen even in August. And then you'll have substitutes and volunteers, and then an extension to the superintendent's contract. So those items for your approval.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve those as read. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Fiesel. And are there any questions or comments? Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mrs. Regola-Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. Now we're to classified staff.
Similar kind of scenario. We have one rescinded contract, a summer worker who decided to do something different. We have a number of resignations. These individuals have secured jobs in other places within Mount Vernon City Schools, so congratulations certainly to them. And then you'll see some employment pieces here. So those items 1 through 4 for your approval.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Goldeye. Do I have a second?
I'll second those.
Thank you, Mrs. Getzmann. Were there any questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Regola-Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, motion carried. Okay, thank you. And did we need executive session for any purpose?
Unless the board needs executive session, I don't at this time.
I'm not aware of anything, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. And Mr. Thompson, are you seconding? Okay. And if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Regola-Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mrs. Getzmann?
Yes.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you, and thanks to all of you for coming.
So